what's going on, beautiful jellyfish? It's Tracy. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time today to hang out with me. I really appreciate it. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing part 3 of EDH Staples. Before we jump into the video, I want to say 2 quick things about these videos. The first thing is I only talk about 10 cards in this video. I always get comments, why didn't you talk about this? Because I only talk about 10 cards per video. The second thing is I will list the other 2 parts in the down bar below so you can check them out if you haven't seen them already. My whole thought process and idea behind these are you're building an EDH deck and you want to know what are good staples for me to have, or you're in a trade with someone, what are good cards that work in all or a lot of different decks. This is the video for you. So we're going to scooch you guys a little bit this way, and I'm going to scooch myself a little bit this way. There we go. And we're going to talk about those 10 cards in this video. How do I move this over? Okay, well, I can't. Okay. Anyways, let's jump into it. The first card I want to talk about is Dualcaster Mage. Now, I run Dualcaster Mage in Riku, and a thought process with Dualcaster Mage you might be thinking is, well, does this card work better in a deck like Riku where you're copying stuff? And I would say yes. However, even if you're not doing that, I think that Dualcaster is a really cool option. It's really fun too. Someone plays their big, draw spell or anything like that, and you just get to do that instead, which is really cool. And then you're left with a 2/2 blocker. So ATBs, you can copy instant or sorcery. You may choose new targets for it, which is really fun. Someone goes to do your really big thing, and then you get to, choose new targets for that copy, which is really, really cool. So yeah, I like Dualcaster Mage. I think it's really cool. And don't underestimate being left with, just a minor blocker at the end. So the next 2 cards we're going to talk about are actually really similar to each other, so I decided to throw them and put them next to each other, and that is Tormenting Voice. So as an additional cost to cast this, you do have to discard a card, which is pretty minor, because then you get to draw 2 cards. There's not really like a whole lot to say here, but I feel like if you're in mono red or you're in a deck where it just doesn't really have a lot of card draw, this is a really solid option for you, and it's only 2 mana. It is at sorcery speed, just something to know. It's also a really good budget option too, if you're looking for that. The card that's very similar to that is Magmatic Insight. Now this is a little more specific because you have to discard a land. However, it's only 1 mana and you get to draw 2 cards. Both of these cards are at sorcery speed, but I think that they're really solid options if you're really struggling, you're on a budget, you're really struggling with drawing cards as an example. You do have to discard, but I think it's a really small price to pay for what you get out of it. So cool. The next card is Shattering Spree. This is for my people who their playgroups run a lot of artifacts. My playgroup tends to run a lot of artifacts. Shattering Spree is a really solid option. What I also really think is cool about Shattering Spree is that you put the amount into it that you need it to. So if, let's just say there's an artifact that's yours or you don't want to destroy because you're being friends with someone, you're being political, whatever it is, or that artifact is just not super threatening and you don't want to destroy it, you don't have the mana, you don't have to. You choose it per artifact. This is really cool. Or let's just say it's early game and you want to guess this out and there's 3 artifacts that you want to remove. Cool, you dump a couple mana into that and then you get to remove it. Shattering Spree is a really solid option. I feel like most playgroups are going to be playing with a lot of artifacts, so this is a great option. Okay, I need you to hold your horses about this card because I'm about to say something that might be a little bit earth-shattering. If you didn't know, I'm not a red mage. This is one of my favorite red cards. I know. And if I'm saying that, I feel like everybody else should be loving this card too because I'm saying that. So for me to love a red card is saying something. Disrupt Decorum. Okay, let me just say, my friend Roberto loves this card. And I love this card because he loves this card, but also because it's a funny card and it's just incredible. Goad is an incredible mechanic. Can we just talk about that? I feel like if you're not aware of that or you're not playing with it, we need to get, that into your brain because it's great. Here's the thing I love about a card like Disrupt Decorum. It's a card that's just always gonna work. Even if you draw this card or it's in your opening hand and you're like, okay, I can hang on to this card for a minute. I feel like that's something too that I don't feel like we talk about enough is it's okay if you draw a card like this or this is in your opening hand and you're like, I'm not gonna cast this until later on in the game. It's okay to have a card like this waiting around. You get what I'm saying? I feel like you don't always have to just draw a card and play it, for example. Disrupt Decorum is a really great example of that. It's 4 mana and you go to all creatures you don't control. So Everyone's got their super big board. Guess what? You are protected. I love this card. I think it's absolutely hilarious. Your opponents are in this weird battle where they have to attack and they have no choice in the matter, which is great. You're protected. You're in your own little bubble, and it's only 4 mana. This card is also budget, and yes, I am really excited that this card exists as a promo. I'm going to be picking this up because I think this is going to be a promo in... What is the most recent set coming out? Is that Double Masters? Commander Masters? Commander Legends? Whatever. I'm excited about it. Whatever it is. It's one of those titles is correct. Also, the flavor text on this card, I'm not normally a big person about flavor text. I normally don't really care, but this flavor text is hilarious. I also blame Roberto for my love of this flavor text because every time he casts it, he always says it, which is dinner and politics don't mix. I do agree. The art is phenomenal. I love this card. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. It's just so fun. It's great. Okay. So I did wear red for this video. So, you know, don't say I don't try, because I do. Okay, the next 2 cards are very similar, so I'm going to be talking about them side by side, very similar to how we did Tormenting Voice and Magmatic Insight. That is Hammer of Purphoros and Fervor. These cards are very, very similar. So Hammer of Purphoros, it's 3 mana, it's an enchantment artifact. It's a little bit on the weird side because it is an artifact enchantment, which means it's a little bit more susceptible to removal, because if someone doesn't have artifact removal, but they have enchantment removal and vice versa, they can remove it. But I still think this card is really solid regardless of that. And then Fervor is only an enchantment. But anyways, the thing about Hammer of Purphoros is I don't think in my days of Magic I've maybe done the second ability 1 time because I was desperate, maybe 2 times, but you're really not here for that other ability, which is, what does it even do? Sack a land, you get a 3/3 golem, only if you're desperate, only if you absolutely need a creature and in order to survive or attack or something like that. That's kind of really like the only circumstances, like, but like I've said, that's not really the purpose. It's because creatures you control have haste. I don't feel like there's a lot to say about that as what it is, but it's so incredibly good. This makes it so, you know, let's just say somebody has a board wipe in their hand or whatever, you get an extra, you get an attack in where maybe you wouldn't normally get that because, you know, I think one of the worst feelings, and we can all agree on this, is playing your big thing, tapping out, you don't have anything to respond to, whatever, and then it goes around a turn cycle, and then somebody right before your turn blows up the board, and you're like, man, or removes your thing, and you didn't even get a chance to attack with it, and that's such an unfortunate feeling. It's like, I wasted all this mana to like do this thing, and then it, you know, blows up, which is really unfortunate. Hammer of Purphoros, and then moving and transitioning to talking about Fervor, which is literally the same thing, is also to, I will say about these is they're both creatures you control, so they're not impacting anybody. And there's only 3 mana. It's just a good card. Both of these are really, really cool. And then also too, if you're like, Tracy, which one should I run? Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Fervor is a little bit more expensive, if that's relevant. But also Hammer is, like I said, a little bit more susceptible to removal because it's an artifact and an enchantment. So just kind of minor things to note. If for me, it's not really a matter of one or the other, it's just both. There's also another card that's similar to those that I'm blanking on that's also very similar, but it's green and red. I forgot what that's called. Okay, this card I run in my Mugus deck because I do have a little bit of recursion and I want to be bringing my creatures back, and I always want creatures to sacrifice because it's a sacrifice themed deck, and that is Squee, but we're talking about Squee the Immortal this time. So you can cast Squee from your graveyard or from exile, so he never dies, hence him being called the Immortal. My biggest thing with Squee, I will say, is don't forget that you have him because that frequently happens to me whenever I have Squee in my graveyard. He doesn't usually get exiled. It's kind of like, it's kind of, I guess the only thing is like if somebody exiles everything, and then it would be exiled, but it's most of the time it's just going to be in the graveyard. Most of the time. Oh, I guess actually too, if someone exiles your graveyard or you got a card that does things like that, like all creatures get exiled or something like that. But anyways, Squee is great. It's great if you just need a body around and you have a way to constantly get it back, or like I mentioned, it's great with sacrifice type of things. You always have something to sacrifice, and then he's a 2/1. You know, he's just a great blocker. He's a solid attacker too. I like him. Impact Tremors. Impact Tremors is just ridiculously fun. It's such a fun card. Impact Tremors is whenever a creature ATBs under your control, deals 1 damage to each opponent. This card is just irritating. If you're playing a ton of creatures, even if you're not playing that many creatures, like if you're just playing a normal set, if you're playing a lot of tokens, this card's awesome because it does say creature. It doesn't say non-token, so you can just keep throwing all the creatures there, and then guess what? You get to do that, which is incredible. This card is just fun. It's a fun little enchantment. I run this... Do I run this in Omnath? I don't remember if I have this in Omnath or I took it out, but anyways, either way, it's a solid card. Also, too, just because if I don't run a card doesn't mean that I don't like it, or just sometimes I don't have a deck that it belongs in, you know what I'm saying? Or I've taken it out for other things, but that doesn't mean that I don't like this card, you know? Sometimes I get nervous when I say that. I'm like, I don't run this card, but that doesn't mean that I don't like it. There's plenty of cards that I don't play that I want to play, you know? Okay, this card is a fun one. I will tell you, I do have this card in Omnath. I'm frozen. I feel like I haven't played Omnath in a while, which is maybe why I'm like having a hard time remembering. And Omnath is like my most red heavy deck, I feel like, out of all my commander decks that have red in it. Goblin Bombardment. This card's funny. It's very similar to Impact Tremors in that I just think it's a funny card. It sack a creature, deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Here's what I love about this card. First off, it's 2 mana. The second thing, I like how I put this, then I said the second thing. The second thing about this card is that you don't have to tap it to do its thing. So I run this, for example, in Omnath that I mentioned. And so what's really cool about this card is that someone blows up the board, or you blow up the board, or something like that. And then with Omnath, they deal 3 damage. But with this, you get to sack in response and they deal 4 damage, which is really cool. But even so, somebody board wipes, somebody goes to exile the board. Instead of exiling, you sacrifice all your 10 things in response. You get to deal 1 damage to each of those things. It is creature or it is player. So let's just say someone blows up your board. You can redirect that and deal all that damage to an opponent's thing, to an opponent's creature, or you can just do it to their face. You've got 10 things, boom, 10 damage to the face. Take it. This card is so fun. I really, really enjoy it. So guys, that is everything for talking about 10 additional red cards. I really hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'd really love to know in a comment what are some of your favorite red cards. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and I'll catch you all in my next one.